The guards didn't speak as they led Kevin Torres through corridors he'd never seen before. In 6 months as Earth's diplomatic representative to the Centrax Empire, he'd learned the palace layout well enough to know when something was wrong. These hallways were older, narrower, lit by bioluminescent panels instead of the modern crystals used in public spaces. The 2 Centrax soldiers flanking him kept their primary arms on their plasma rifles, their secondary arms twitching with what Kevin had learned to recognize as nervousness. "Where are we going?" Kevin asked for the 3rd time. The guard on his left finally answered, her voice a whistling rasp through her translator. "The princess requests your presence. Alone." Immediately, Kevin's pulse quickened. Princess Velora didn't grant private audiences. She especially didn't grant them to humans, a species most of the Centrax nobility considered barely civilized. The Empire spanned 40 star systems and commanded fleets that could glass planets. Earth had been making contact for less than a decade, still struggling to reverse engineer the basic jump drives the Centrax had been using for centuries. They stopped at a door carved from something that looked like black glass. One guard pressed her palm against it, and the surface rippled like water before sliding open. "Enter," the guard said. "We will wait here." Kevin stepped through into a chamber that took his breath away. The walls were transparent, showing the sprawling capital city of Nexara below, its towers glowing against the purple twilight of the planet's 18-hour day. But Kevin barely noticed the view. Princess Velora stood in the center of the room, her forearms wrapped around herself in a gesture of distress that transcended species. Her usually pristine silver robes were disheveled, and her large, dark eyes were wider than Kevin had ever seen them. "Close the door," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. Kevin did. The moment the door sealed, Velora crossed to him in 3 long strides. She was tall, nearly 7 feet, and her proximity made Kevin acutely aware of how alien she was despite the months of diplomacy. Her skin had a faint, iridescent quality, shifting from pale blue to silver depending on the light. "You need to see something," she said. "Something I was never supposed to find." She moved to a table where a small crystal rested on a projection pad. Her upper hands trembled as she activated it. A holographic display burst to life, filling the air with data streams Kevin couldn't immediately parse. 3 days ago, I accessed restricted files in the Imperial Intelligence Archive, Velora said. Files about Earth, about humans. She looked at him, and Kevin saw something in her eyes he'd never seen before. Fear. "Kevin, why didn't you tell us?" "Tell you what? What Earth is." She manipulated the display with practiced gestures, and suddenly Kevin was looking at his home world rotating in miniature above the table. "A soft place. That's why the Council has been so dismissive of your requests for mutual defense treaties. That's why they laugh when your ambassadors talk about Earth's military capabilities." Kevin felt ice forming in his stomach. "Princess, I don't understand." "Look at this." She pulled up a document, and Kevin's limited understanding of written Centrax let him pick out a few words. Gravity differential. Atmospheric composition. Radiation exposure. These are the environmental parameters for Earth compared to standard Centrax-compatible worlds. The numbers meant nothing to Kevin until Velora began translating them into terms he could grasp. "Your gravity is 1.4 times what we consider safe," she said. "Your atmospheric pressure is enough to cause cellular damage in Centrax physiology within 6 hours. The oxygen content alone would be toxic to us. We breathe oxygen, yes, but at 18% atmospheric composition. Yours is 20% atmospheric. That 3% difference would corrode our lung tissue." She was speaking faster now, her words tumbling over each other. "And the radiation, Kevin. The radiation levels on Earth's surface, even with your magnetic field and ozone layer, are nearly double what Centrax biology can tolerate long-term." Kevin opened his mouth, closed it. He'd never thought about it. Earth was just Earth. "I don't see why this matters. Our species evolved in different environments. That's normal." "No," Velora's voice cracked. "It's not normal. Not like this." "Kevin, I ran the comparisons. Of the 63 species in the Centrax Empire, 58 of them evolved on worlds with nearly identical conditions. Gravity between 0.8 and 1.1 standard. Oxygen levels between 15 and 19%. Radiation exposure within a narrow band that allows complex life to develop without constant cellular repair mechanisms. She pulled up another document, and Kevin saw images of microorganisms he didn't recognize. Even your bacteria are aggressive. Your viruses mutate at rates that would cause pandemic-level extinction events on Centrax worlds. You've survived plagues that would have ended our civilization 10 times over. Kevin's mind raced. You're saying Earth is dangerous? I'm saying Earth is impossible. Velora's 4 hands clenched into fists. By every model we have, complex sapient life shouldn't exist on your planet. The conditions are too harsh. The selection pressure's too extreme. And yet you're here, and you think of your world as home. She met his eyes. The High Council is planning to invade Earth. The words hit Kevin like a physical blow. What? 6 months from now. They've been building the fleet in the outer shipyards. 200,000 soldiers. Atmospheric deployment capable. They plan to land, establish occupation zones, and strip mine your planet for the heavy metals and rare elements that are abundant in high-gravity worlds. Velora's voice dropped to barely a whisper. Kevin, those soldiers will die. All of them. Not from human weapons. From Earth itself. Kevin felt the room tilting. How long have you known? I suspected the invasion plans for weeks. I only found these files 3 days ago. Velora turned away, wrapping her arms around herself again. I've been trying to decide what to do. If I warn the Council, they'll want to know how I accessed classified intelligence files. I'll be charged with treason. But if I don't warn them, I'll be sending 200,000 of my people to their deaths. Show them the data, Kevin said. It's right there. The evidence. They won't believe it. They'll think I fabricated it to protect Earth, to protect you. She looked at him over her shoulder. The Council believes humans are weak, soft. They think you come from a paradise world where nothing ever challenged you, where you never had to fight for survival. That's why they think conquering you will be easy. Kevin laughed, a bitter sound. A paradise world. Earth has killed more humans than every war we've ever fought combined. Earthquakes, tsunamis, volcanoes, droughts, plagues. We've spent our entire existence fighting just to survive another generation. I know that now, Velora said quietly, but the Council doesn't. And they won't believe it unless I can prove it. The door chimed. Both of them froze. Princess Velora, a voice called from outside. The High Council requests your presence in the war room. Velora looked at Kevin, desperation in her eyes. Come with me. I need you there. They'll never allow a human into the war room. I'll make them allow it. She straightened, smoothing her robes with all 4 hands. I'm still a princess of the Empire. I have some authority left. Kevin followed her to the door. The guards fell into step behind them as Velora led the way through the palace at a pace that forced Kevin to jog. His shorter legs and heavier build made it hard to keep up, and he realized for the first time that what felt normal to him, walking upright against Earth's gravity every day of his life, had built muscles that Centrax physiology never needed to develop. The war room was deep in the palace's secured levels. Velora's authority got them past 3 checkpoints, but at the 4th, a senior officer blocked their path. Princess, the human cannot enter. He is my advisor on this matter, Velora said, her voice carrying the tone of command Kevin had rarely heard from her. The Council is discussing an invasion of his homeworld. He has a right to be present. The officer's 4 eyes narrowed, but he stepped aside. Kevin entered the war room and felt the temperature of the space drop as every Centrax official turned to stare at him. There were 12 of them arrayed around a holographic display showing what Kevin recognized with a jolt as Earth's solar system. Velora, one of the counselors said, his voice sharp. What is the meaning of this? Counselor Drake, I've discovered information about Earth that changes everything. Velora strode to the holographic display, and Kevin noticed her hands were steady now, her voice clear. The invasion must be called off. The room erupted. Multiple counselors spoke at once, their translators overlapping into a cacophony of outrage and disbelief. Drake, who appeared to be the senior member, raised one hand for silence. Princess, you forget yourself. The invasion fleet launches in 23 days. All preparations are complete. We will not be swayed by sentimental attachment to a human pet. The casual cruelty of the words made Kevin's jaw tighten, but Velora didn't flinch. I have accessed Imperial intelligence files on Earth's environmental conditions, she said. Files that were classified and kept from the Council's Invasion Planning Committee. I believe deliberately. That got their attention. Drake's expression shifted from condescension to sharp interest. Explain. Velora activated her personal display crystal, projecting the same data she'd shown Kevin. Earth is not a garden world. It's a death world. The gravity alone would incapacitate our soldiers within days. The atmospheric composition would cause toxic oxygen damage within hours. The radiation exposure would trigger cellular breakdown faster than our medical technology can repair it. She pulled up the microorganism data and the pathogens. Counselors, Earth's bacterial and viral ecosystem would treat Centrax biology as an invasive species. Our immune systems have never encountered anything like what exists on that planet. One of the other counselors, a female with elaborate silver markings on her face, laughed. Preposterous. If Earth were so hostile, humans couldn't exist. Humans exist because they evolved there, Velora said. They adapted to conditions that would kill us. Their bones are denser to handle the gravity. Their blood carries oxygen more efficiently. Their cellular repair mechanisms work 10 times faster than ours. They've survived extinction-level plagues that would have ended our species before we ever reached sapience. Drake studied the data, his 4 eyes moving independently across the displays. If this is true, why didn't Earth's diplomats inform us? Why hide their world's true nature? Kevin spoke for the first time, and every head turned toward him. We didn't hide it. We assumed you already knew. We assumed any species capable of faster-than-light travel would have scanned our planet thoroughly before making contact. This is the only world we've ever known. We have no frame of reference for what counts as normal. To us, Earth is normal. Impossible, the silver-marked counselor said. No sapient species could evolve in such an environment. Then we're impossible, Kevin said quietly. But we're here. Drake manipulated the display, bringing up military projections. Even if the environmental data is accurate, our soldiers will be equipped with environmental suits, sealed systems. They won't be exposed to the local conditions. For how long? Velora challenged. How long can soldiers operate in sealed suits on a high-gravity world? How long before the suits fail? Before someone makes a mistake? Before battle damage compromises the seals? She pulled up casualty projections. I've run the simulations, Counselor. Even with perfect environmental protection, the gravity alone will reduce soldier effectiveness by 40%. Combat operations will require twice as much energy expenditure. Fatigue will set in 3 times faster. And the moment those suits fail, the soldiers inside will begin dying. You're asking us to abandon the invasion based on theoretical projections, Drake said. The Council requires proof. Then test it, Kevin said. The words came out before he'd fully thought them through. But once he started, he couldn't stop. Test it on me. The room went silent. What are you proposing? Drake asked. Kevin's heart hammered against his ribs. You want proof that the environmental gap between our species is real? Take me to your medical facilities. Run a reverse compatibility test. Expose me to conditions that are comfortable for Centrax biology. Lower gravity, thinner atmosphere, reduced radiation. See what happens. Velora grabbed his arm with 2 of her hands. Kevin, no, that could kill you. If I'm right, it won't kill me, Kevin said, looking at Drake. It'll just prove that I'm built for an environment you're not. And if I'm wrong, if humans really are as adaptable as you think, then I'll be fine, and you can proceed with your invasion. He pulled his arm free from Velora's grasp. Either way, you'll have your proof. Drake studied Kevin with all 4 eyes, and Kevin forced himself not to look away. Finally, the counselor nodded. Very well. We'll conduct the test immediately. The medical facility was a gleaming chamber of technology Kevin barely understood. Centrax doctors moved around him with professional efficiency, attaching sensors to his skin and checking readouts on displays he couldn't read. Velora stood outside the transparent barrier, her 4 hands pressed against the glass. "This is insane," she said through the communication system. "Kevin, you don't have to do this." "Yes, I do," Kevin said. "If I don't, they'll send those soldiers to Earth and they'll die. All of them." "You know I'm right." The head physician, an elderly Centrax with faded blue skin, approached Kevin. "We will gradually adjust the environmental conditions in this chamber to match standard Centrax comfort levels. Gravity will be reduced to 0.85 standard. Atmospheric pressure will decrease by 20%. Oxygen content will be lowered to 18%. Radiation shielding will be increased to reduce exposure to 70% of Earth normal." She paused. "If at any point you experience severe distress, the test will be terminated." "Understood," Kevin said. The physician retreated behind the barrier with Velora and the counselors who had come to observe. Kevin stood in the center of the chamber, trying to keep his breathing steady. The changes started slowly. Kevin felt the gravity shift first, a strange lightness in his limbs that made him feel like he might float away. It wasn't unpleasant at first, almost exhilarating, like the moment at the peak of a jump before gravity pulled him back down. But then his inner ear began protesting, sending confused signals to his brain about which way was up. Nausea rolled through his stomach. The atmospheric pressure dropped next. Kevin's ears popped painfully, and he swallowed hard, trying to equalize the pressure. His lungs expanded, pulling in air that felt thin and unsatisfying. He took deeper breaths, trying to compensate, but it felt like breathing at high altitude. His chest began to ache. Then the oxygen levels changed. Kevin gasped as his cells, accustomed to Earth's oxygen-rich atmosphere, suddenly found themselves starving. His vision blurred at the edges. His fingers tingled as circulation struggled to deliver enough oxygen to his extremities. He sank to one knee, then to both, his head swimming. Warning alarms blared. Through the fog in his mind, Kevin heard the physician shouting orders. The chamber door burst open and hands grabbed him, pulling him out into normal gravity and atmosphere. Kevin sucked in desperate lungfuls of air, his vision slowly clearing. Velora was kneeling beside him, her large eyes filled with tears. "You fool," she whispered. "You absolute fool." "How long?" Kevin managed to ask. "How long was I in there?" 4 minutes. The physician said, her voice shaken. "Your blood oxygen levels dropped by 30%. Your cellular respiration began shutting down. Another 2 minutes and you would have suffered permanent brain damage." Kevin looked up at Drake, who stood over him with an expression Kevin couldn't read. "You proved your point," the counselor said quietly. "That was with gradual adjustment and immediate medical intervention. Centrax soldiers in sealed suits on Earth's surface, under combat conditions, with no way to evacuate quickly if the suits fail." He shook his head. "They would die even faster than you nearly did. And Earth's environment is far more extreme than what we just tested." "The invasion?" Kevin asked. "Will be brought before the full council for reconsideration." Drake looked at Velora. "You were right, Princess, and you showed considerable courage in bringing this to our attention, despite the personal risk." But there was no time for relief. A junior officer burst into the medical facility, his forearms gesturing frantically. "Counselor Drake, the invasion fleet has launched!" The words sucked all the air from the room. "That's impossible," Drake said. "Launch was scheduled for 23 days from now. New orders came through from High Command 6 hours ago." The officer said. "The fleet is en route to Earth. Estimated arrival in 72 hours. Kevin struggled to his feet, ignoring the protests from the physician. Someone moved up the timeline. Someone who didn't want the council to reconsider, Velora said, her voice hard. Someone who knew what I'd found. Drake was already moving, his long legs carrying him toward the door. "We need to reach the communications center. We can still recall the fleet." They ran through the palace corridors, Kevin's shorter legs burning with effort as he fought to keep pace. The communications center was in the palace's highest tower, a massive chamber filled with quantum relay equipment that could send messages across the Empire instantaneously. They burst through the doors to find the center locked down, armed guards blocking access to the main transmitter array. "By order of High Command, no communications regarding the Earth invasion fleet are to be transmitted," the guard captain said. "I am Counselor Drake," Drake said, his voice carrying the weight of authority. "Stand aside." I have my orders, Counselor, from someone whose authority supersedes yours. Drake's four hands clenched into fists, but Velora stepped forward. Captain, I am Princess Velora, third in line to the Imperial throne, she said, her voice ringing with command Kevin had never heard before. My authority supersedes everyone in this palace except the Emperor himself. These guards will stand aside, or they will be charged with treason against the crown. The captain hesitated, and Kevin saw the calculation in his eyes. Then, slowly, he stepped aside. Velora moved to the main console with Kevin and Drake close behind. Her four hands flew across the controls, opening communication channels to the invasion fleet. But as soon as the channel connected, a harsh voice cut through. This is Fleet Admiral Corzin. We are under strict communications protocol. No transmissions will be accepted until we have achieved orbit around the target world. Admiral, this is Counselor Drake. You must abort the invasion immediately. We have critical intelligence about Earth's environmental conditions that... Counselor, I have my orders directly from High Command. Unless you have authorization codes from the Emperor himself, this channel is closed. The connection cut out. Velora slammed one fist on the console. He won't listen. None of them will. They think we're trying to stop the invasion for political reasons. Then we need to give them proof they can't ignore, Kevin said. Proof that isn't just data and projections. What kind of proof? Drake asked. Kevin met the counselor's eyes. Let them send a landing party. A small one. Tell them it's a reconnaissance mission. Advance scouts to test defenses. His throat felt tight. When those scouts land on Earth without full environmental protection, when they realize what the planet itself is doing to them, they'll understand. You're asking me to let Centrax soldiers die, Drake said. I'm asking you to let a handful die so that 200,000 don't, Kevin said. And so that Earth doesn't have to kill them itself. Because if that fleet lands, if those soldiers try to establish a beachhead, my people will fight back. And between Earth's environment and human resistance, there won't be any survivors. Velora looked at Drake. He's right. A small test landing. Volunteers only. We brief them on the risks, give them the choice. Drake stood silent for a long moment, then nodded. He reopened the channel to the fleet. Admiral Corzin, this is Counselor Drake. I'm ordering you to conduct a limited reconnaissance landing. Send no more than 20 volunteers to Earth's surface. Standard exploration equipment. Minimal environmental protection. We need data on local conditions before the main invasion. There was a pause. Then... Understood, Counselor. We'll deploy a scout team as soon as we achieve orbit. Corzin out. The next 70 hours were the longest of Kevin's life. He stayed in the communications center with Velora and Drake, monitoring the fleet's approach to Earth. They watched as the massive ships dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the solar system, then began their subluminal approach to his homeworld. Kevin thought about calling Earth, warning them, but what would he say? A Centrax invasion fleet was coming, but don't worry, the planet itself would probably kill the invaders before they could do any real damage. It sounded insane even in his own mind. The fleet achieved orbit. Kevin watched his homeworld rotating on the tactical display, so familiar and so far away. He wondered if anyone down there was looking up at the sky, seeing the shapes that didn't belong among the stars. Scout team is prepping for deployment, the communications officer reported. They're landing in a remote area, low population density, minimal risk of hostile contact. Kevin recognized the coordinates. Northern Canada, boreal forest. Cold this time of year, but not lethally so. If the Centrax soldiers were going to survive anywhere on Earth, it would be there. The landing craft descended. Kevin watched the telemetry, saw the craft enter Earth's atmosphere. Watched the external temperature readings climb from the heat of re-entry. The craft touched down in a clearing, and the rear hatch opened. 20 Centrax soldiers stepped out onto Earth. For the first few minutes, everything seemed fine. The soldiers moved around the landing site, taking readings, collecting samples. Their biosigns were stable. Kevin felt a terrible doubt creeping in. What if he was wrong? What if Earth wasn't as deadly as the data suggested? Then the first soldier collapsed. Kevin watched the biosign flatline. watched the medics rush to the fallen soldier's aid. But there was nothing they could do. The soldier's suit had a micro-tear, barely visible, caused by a sharp branch during the descent. Earth's atmosphere had flooded in. The soldier had lasted 6 minutes. Another soldier went down. Then another. The scout team was in full panic now, rushing back to the landing craft, but they were moving sluggishly, their bodies already struggling against Earth's gravity. One soldier tripped, and Kevin watched in horror as the fall that would have been minor on a Centrax world drove the soldier's face into the ground with enough force to crack their helmet visor. Earth's bacteria and viruses flooded in. The soldier began convulsing within seconds. "Get them out," Velora whispered. "Please. Get them out." The landing craft's engines fired, lifting off with only 12 of the 20 soldiers still alive. But as it climbed back toward orbit, more biosigns began failing. The soldiers who had been exposed, even briefly, were dying from pathogenic shock, their immune systems completely overwhelmed by Earth's hyper-aggressive microorganism ecosystem. By the time the landing craft reached the fleet, only 6 soldiers were still alive, and they were all in critical condition. Fleet Admiral Corzan's face appeared on the display, his 4 eyes wide with shock. "Counselor Drake, we've just committed mass murder." "What is that planet?" "That planet is a death world, Admiral," Drake said quietly, "and we just learned why humans are the only species capable of living on it. Abort the invasion. Bring the fleet home." There was no argument this time. The fleet began its withdrawal from Earth orbit, and Kevin felt the tension drain from his body so completely that he had to sit down before he fell down. Velora sat beside him, one of her hands finding his. "You saved them," she said. "You saved both our peoples." 14 Centrax soldiers died, Kevin said, his voice hollow. "Because I suggested the test. 200,000 would have died without it," Drake said, standing over them. "Admiral Corzan is already transmitting the landing party data to High Command. Once the Emperor sees what happened, there will be no more talk of invading Earth." He looked at Kevin. "I suspect there will be a great deal more respect for humanity, however. Any species that can survive on a world like that can thrive on it, is not to be underestimated." 3 days later, Kevin stood in the palace gardens with Velora, looking up at the stars. Somewhere out there was Earth, beautiful and deadly, the only home humanity had ever known. "The Emperor wants to establish a joint research program," Velora said, "studying Earth's environment, understanding how humans adapted to it. He believes there might be medical applications, ways to make Centrax biology more resilient." "And the High Command members who tried to rush the invasion?" Kevin asked. "Under investigation for treason, moving up the launch timeline without council approval, blocking communications, risking the lives of 200,000 soldiers." Velora's voice was cold. "They'll answer for what they did." Kevin nodded. He thought about those 14 soldiers, the ones who had died on Earth's soil. Their bodies had been recovered and returned to their families with full military honors. It wasn't enough, could never be enough, but it was something. "I've been thinking," Velora said quietly, "about what you said, that Earth has killed more humans than all your wars combined. That you've spent your entire existence fighting to survive." She looked at him. "What kind of species does that create? What kind of people emerge from a world that's constantly trying to kill them?" Kevin thought about humanity's history, the endless struggle against nature and disease and disaster. He thought about the creativity born from desperation, the resilience built through suffering, the compassion that grew from shared hardship. "Survivors," he said finally. "Earth creates survivors." Velora smiled, an expression that looked strange on her alien features but somehow felt genuine. "The Emperor wants to propose a formal alliance, the Centrax Empire and Earth, as equals. Partners." "Equals," Kevin repeated. The word felt strange. 6 months ago, the Centrax had barely acknowledged humanity's existence. Now, after learning what Earth truly was, they wanted an alliance. "We were wrong about you," Velora said. "About all of you. We thought you were weak because you came from a soft world. We never imagined that the opposite was true, that you were strong because your world demanded it." She paused. "I'm glad I found those files, Kevin. I'm glad I was brave enough to show you, and brave enough to stand before the council, because otherwise we would have gone to war, and both our peoples would have suffered. Kevin took her hand, feeling the different texture of her skin, the extra joints in her fingers. You saved us all, Velora. You were the one who had the courage to act. We saved each other, she said. That's what partners do. They stood together in the garden, human and Centrax, representatives of two species that had almost gone to war and had instead found peace. Above them, the stars shone bright and cold and infinite. Somewhere among them was Earth, still dangerous, still deadly, still home. And for the first time since leaving his planet, Kevin felt at peace with that. Earth had made humanity what they were, had forged them in the crucible of survival until they became something unique in the galaxy. Not despite their world's hostility, but because of it. In the princess's private chamber, he had learned why Earth would kill the Centrax. But standing here in the gardens, looking at the stars, he understood something deeper. Earth had not just created humanity. It had created humanity's strength, their resilience, their refusal to give up, no matter how impossible the odds. And that was a gift no paradise world could ever provide.